What an inflationary introduction. I'm barely a household word in my own household. But I'll tell you one thing, and that is that I think the best of public service is what Dave Barrick did in our office for years, what all of you do, which is to speak truth to power, say that you're not going to leave the truth behind, and that you're constantly going to fight for the public interest. And as long as I'm in public service, I want you to know at the top of my list is going to be giving whistleblowers the tools to protect the American people. Thank you. So, in addition to recognizing Dave Barrick for leading our oversight team, I also have the ability to take a few minutes to honor the sacrifice and determination of whistleblowers, and particularly symbolizing that effort is the inimitable Dr. Jeffrey Wygant, who we honor today. Let's give it up for him. I can't really hear you. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Jeffrey in a minute, but Dave Barrick summed up very well why I'm honored to lead the Senate Whistleblower Caucus. My own view is members of Congress, and get this word, have a duty to help those without power speak truth to power. Whistleblowers need to be heard, protected. We've made a lot of headway, but there is even more to do. Now, in recent years, whistleblowers have been critical to some of the biggest oversight projects at the Senate Finance Committee. Last year, the committee released a report on the now former Swiss bank Credit Suisse. The report highlighted how years after the bank promised to get right with U.S. law enforcement, it was continuing to hide dozens of accounts belonging to U.S. citizens who were hiding hundreds of millions of dollars, ripping off the taxpayers who flout the law. The report's most stunning revelation came from, guess where, everybody? Excuse me. A whistleblower who came to the committee and outlined an ongoing conspiracy to hire over $100 million in assets for a dual U.S. Latin American family. Now, make no mistake about it, without this critical testimony, without the whistleblower taking on the odds and speaking out, tax scofflaws at Credit Suisse could still be hiding today. Whistleblowers make a difference, and let's make sure the public knows it. Another project made possible by the whistleblowers was our effort to blow the whistle on rampant failures in the organ transplant system. This was an investigation conducted jointly with my partner in the Whistleblower Caucus. Remember, you're not going to hear a word that's partisan about this. This is a bipartisan cause, and my caucus partner is Senator Grassley. Let's hear it for him, too. Our hearing featured the testimony of a whistleblower, Dr. Jamie Locke, a transplant surgeon in Alabama, who came forward to describe the horrific events she saw. She recounted a recovered kidney that had been run over on the airport tarmac. We heard that these kidneys are lying around, folks, in airports and tarmacs. And it arrived at her transplant hospital in a box covered in tire marks. She testified to another kidney that arrived frozen solid and was unusable, or others were being held overnight in airport cargo rooms treated like lost luggage. For years, she reported these incidents up proper channels and saw no changes, but she came to Congress and saw action. Following her testimony at our hearing, the House and Senate unanimously passed the Oregon Procurement and Transplantation Network Act, which is finally, folks, going to break the monopoly control of the organ transplant system. That's reform, breaking up these monopolies. Finally, I'd like to highlight the contributions of whistleblowers that are in the Inspector General's office, particularly Social Security. Could you raise your hands, folks? Where are you? Social Security. And let's give a round of applause to them. Those Social Security whistleblowers came to the Finance Committee to describe how they were facing retaliation and intimidation for raising concerns about abuse of the civil monetary penalty, and without due process was leveling penalties that could reach over $100,000 against disabled claimants. Get that? You know, government is giving tax breaks to people who are at the top of the ladder, and they're leveling penalties that can reach $100,000 against disabled folks who are trying to get a fair shake in the legal system. But these whistleblowers said, no, we understand who we're going to stand up for. We're going to stand up for those disabled claimants. And they performed their job admirably. And what'd they get? Harassment, intimidation, retaliation, and even a lawsuit from a superior seeking $1 billion in damages. In one instance, the U.S. Merit System Board found that the Inspector General and her leadership team had retaliated against the whistleblower, but the harassment continued. But now, make no mistake about it, thanks to the determination of those courageous Social Security whistleblowers, change is coming. The Inspector General has had to resign. Because of their good work, we're going to get new leadership. So, all those folks and the whistleblowers that we honor today are doing the hard thing. They come forward when doing nothing could have been the easy choice. And through personal sacrifice, we have seen action in area after area, as I just touched on. And so I'm going to close with a little bit of a different approach, because I know that some future whistleblowers are out there. And I gather C-SPAN is with us, thank goodness. That helps get the truth to the public. Let's thank C-SPAN for covering whistleblowers. And future whistleblowers are wondering, and you can hear them sometimes talk about it with a close friend or a family member. They're wondering if they ought to come forward. It's a really tough decision, right? See some young people right here in front of me. Expose misconduct, expose waste in government. Some skinny guy from Oregon says you ought to do a lot of it. But you say, what does it mean for me? And will I be okay? Will my family be okay? And I just want you all to know that this is some of the most important work you can possibly do in public service. And so I want to, before I introduce Dr. Wyden, my last assignment, all of you that are whistleblowing now, all of you who are young people thinking about public service and whether you ought to do whistleblowing in the future, my message to you is there are people on both sides of the aisle. Senator Grassley and I are not alone. For all you whistleblowers, now and into the future, we are going to have your back, period. We're going to have your back. We will. Okay. And I'm going to introduce Dr. Jeffrey Wygant, and then you're going to hear from the other 50% of the whistleblower leadership here in the Congress. The person I want to introduce is one of the most consequential whistleblowers ever in the field of public health. His efforts to expose the shady dealings of big tobacco turned the tide of cigarette usage in the United States and around the world. Because of the man I'm going to introduce, Dr. Jeffrey Wygant, the public learned basic facts about cigarettes that big tobacco was trying to hide. Cigarettes are fundamentally unsafe and designed as nicotine delivery systems. The person you're going to hear from next, Dr. Jeffrey Wygant, exposed big tobacco's desire to hook kids on nicotine early and create customers for life. I'll wrap up by saying I'm honored to have played a bit role in Dr. Wygant's incredible story. 30 years as a young congressman, 30 years ago as a young congressman, I had a full head of hair and rugged good looks. And I served with Henry Waxman on the Committee on Energy and Commerce on Health and the Environment. At one hearing, we had 7 CEOs from the major U.S. tobacco companies testify. I asked each of those executives, yes or no, whether nicotine was addictive. Each one of them said no. And thanks to Dr. Jeffrey Wygant and the expertise he provided to Congress, to regulators, and the press, now we know those statements were false. Please join me now in welcoming Dr. Jeffrey Wygant, an amazing whistleblower who told truth to one of the most powerful institutions in America.